What's going on, everyone? Welcome into the Cleveland Browns Report by Chat Sports. I am your host, Matthew Peterson, and boy, oh boy, do we have a jam-packed show. But hey, at least we're not the Raiders right now, dealing with all that Derek Carr saga. But coming up on today's show, is Kevin Stefanski being micromanaged, right? Is there a puppet government in place right now? That might be a stretch, but it's a little bit of a Vichy government situation. Also, we got some new Joe Woods replacements, rumors, just some names to keep an eye on as we get closer to, I think, the inevitable, which is a change at the defensive coordinator position. And like today's video, just because the more likes we get, the better. And you know what? Michigan Football Report is coming up here next to the studio, and I would love to get more likes than them. So if you got any Buckeyes fans watching, hit that thumbs up icon. But let's talk about the puppet government. So what happened was Twitter was set ablaze yesterday when Tony Grossi, who covers the Browns for TheLandOnDemand, wrote an article about Paul DePodesta micromanaging the team. And if you're unfamiliar with who Paul DePodesta is, he's the guy from Moneyball, right? He's Jonah Hill. He's the analytics guru from that A's team. He's been with the Browns for quite some time now. And there is a sense of, I wouldn't say belief, but at least a report from Grossi that the Browns are just leaning heavily on DePodesta. He's running the show. He's calling the shots. And Kevin Stefanski is more or less kind of like a baseball manager, right? Sort of Aaron Boone of, here's the lineup card. Here's what you can do. We're following analytics. Run these plays X amount of time, and so on and so forth. I mean, that's not exactly what is being alleged or what Grossi is saying, but more or less it's that DePodesta is calling the shots, and Stefanski is kind of a puppet if that is the case, right? If you're the head coach and someone above you is telling you how to play call and how to run the game, how much of a head coach really are you? So with that, I want to share this tweet with you that kind of got the ball rolling, and we'll follow this trail of what was just chaos on Browns Twitter yesterday. So Roberto Shenanigans, what an all-time name, tweeting out, this new Grossi article is wild. Reportedly, DePodesta is running every aspect of the Browns, including putting together game plans and play calling. Example, throwing 31 times in bad weather because Depo's formula says 4-yard runs have no value. This is concerning for 3 reasons. Now, we're not going to follow the thread here, but I do want to share some little clips from this Grossi article from TheLandOnDemand. Now, let's get started with this right here. Paul DePodesta has pretty much convinced owner Jimmy Haslam that the only way to build a Super Bowl team is by consistently throwing for explosive plays in the passing game, apparently no matter the weather conditions. Now, Grossi went on to say, the bottom line is Stefanski's job is safe because he is completely adhering to DePodesta's advanced statistics or analytics models and not resisting them. Disagreeing with or rejecting DePodesta's research would be Stefanski's quickest ticket out of town. All right. So this is what I'm saying of, this is kind of puppet government-esque, right? Where DePodesta's calling all the shots from above and from behind the scenes, and Stefanski is just a figurehead, a guy on the sideline who is carrying out DePodesta's orders. So I'll give you my take on this in just a second, but there was an interesting quote inside of Grossi's article I thought you guys should see too. It comes from a former Browns operations employee who said, Haslam believes in the analytics so much. I think head coaches try to please him throwing the ball. We sat in countless meetings about how important it was to throw the ball. A 4-yard run was of no value on the analytics chart, and it was about 13-yard passes and more. Only runs of 7 yards were of value. Depot came in with some magical score. I want to ask this question right off the bat before I kind of give my answer, give my TED Talk on this. But are you in favor of heavy analytics, right? Do you like the idea of analytics and following the book and just going off of that for all the decision makings? Or are you more, maybe I'm kind of in the middle of analytics are great and all, you should use them, but also don't just put your head in the sand and only listen to analytics. Sometimes get to feel the game and see how hard it is to get 2 yards when you want to decide whether or not to go for it on 4th down. Let me know in the comment section down below. So here's my stance on this. One, is this really news, right? I mean, not the puppet government part, but the Browns love analytics. Pardon my French, no shit, Sherlock. Like, every team loves analytics this day and age. This is 2022. All these teams have analytic teams. Like, if you're shocked by that, what did you think the analytics team did right? Do you think they just play foosball all day? No. Of course they're coming up with magical numbers and scores and formulas for winning football games. That's their job. Now, as for the allegations of Stefanski just being a puppet, I'm going to push back on that a little bit because I really just don't want that to believe to be true. But we're just going off of one person's word, so it's hard to give it like 4 Bernie heads or something like that. Now, I do think there is some truth to running a play for 4 yards is nothing where you can pass it. Because, yes, I love the ground game. I love what the Browns can do with Nick Chubb. They got awesome offensive line. But, I mean, Warren Sharp Football Analysis does a great job of breaking down explosive plays every single year. And here are the team leaders for 2021 explosive run plays. An explosive run play is a run of more than 10 yards. The Browns ranked number 1. They also went 8-9 and missed the playoffs. The Colts went 9-8, and Carson Wentz caused them to miss the playoffs. The Eagles went 9-8, and they were a first-round exit. So the top 3 explosive run teams last year, 1 playoff appearance, 0-1. As for the explosive pass plays last year, 49ers, NFC Championship game. The Rams, who won the Super Bowl, and the Patriots, which is kind of weird to think about with Mac Jones, but they did like to air it out last year. So it kind of goes to show the 3 teams that were really good at running the football, 2 didn't make the playoffs, and 1 was a first-round exit. The 3 teams that were awesome at passing the football last year for explosive plays, 20 or more yards, all 3 made the playoffs. 1 won the Super Bowl, and 1 of the 2 teams that didn't win the Super Bowl lost to that team, right? The Niners losing to the Rams. In fact, DePodesta is looking for a Super Bowl ring, and there is a decent amount of reason to believe passing the football with explosive plays, right? Those big chunk yardage. I'm not talking just like passing every single time for short and little pickups, but looking for the chunk size plays here. Look at the recent Super Bowl winners. The last 4 Super Bowl winners, where they ranked in explosive pass plays. The Rams, who we just talked about, were 2nd in the NFL. The Bucs with Brady in 2020 were 4th. The Chiefs, the Patriots, the 2 previous seasons, both top 10. So there is some good reason to believe why DePodesta prefers big plays over the air, which I get. Of course, we all want that, but it comes at a price of you keep trying, you keep getting incomplete passes, and you keep getting put in 2nd and 3rd and long and whatnot. But I do think his point does have some water to it of I see why he values that over a 4-yard gain. Now, before we get to the rest of the show, we are 81 subs away from reaching 16,200. It's crazy how much growth this channel has seen this season. We entered the season with less than 10,000 subs, so join along, hit that big red button, and subscribe if you have not already. Let's switch gears a little bit here, and let's talk about the defensive coordinator spot, because the Browns are expected to make some changes to their coaching staff this offseason. And an early list of potential DCs has surfaced from Brad Stainbrook. We'll look at that in just a moment. But the number 1 fix that needs to be made is the Browns' run defense, which is dead last in ESPN's EPA ranking. Just a lot of big numbers getting put into a calculator. But how about this from Cameron Justice today, right? Greg Newsome speaking with the media saying, on possible staffing changes at the end of the season, that's above my pay grade. A couple ways of looking at this. 1, you're telling me Greg Newsome isn't going to stick up for his coaches, right? If Greg Newsome loved the defensive coaches, don't you think he might go out and say, I sure hope there's no changes. We love Joe Woods. We love our staff, and we don't want to see anything broken up. Now, maybe I'm reading into it a bit much, but to me it sounds like Greg Newsome's kind of standing there going, that's above my pay grade, but I wouldn't mind if we got some new blood into the building here. Also, this from Chops tweeting out, seems like most likely scenario right now with a veteran defensive coach brought in. Seems pretty apparent that this young defense needs a strong voice on that side of the ball. And there's a guy on the Steelers staff who makes a ton of sense. I'm going to go on a limb here and say Chops is not talking about Mike Tomlin, but instead Brian Flores, the linebacker coach and like defensive consultant. And Flores had some good and bad moments with the Dolphins in his 3 years as head coach. But one thing was for sure, this defense kicked ass. I mean, when he entered in 2019, they were 30th in yards allowed. When he exited, 15th. I mean, the growth was tremendous on a defense that, if you might remember, before Flores got there, that was a Dolphins team that started off like 0-8. I mean, they were just getting slaughtered. PETA was getting numerous phone calls about tragedies taking place in South Beach to the Dolphins. All right. It wasn't just yards allowed, though, because there's lots of ways to measure a defense. Points allowed. I mean, look at the jump here from 32nd in 2019 all the way to 16th. I mean, there were some serious gains made while he was there, right? From 32nd to 6th. I mean, that's a huge jump. Defense is a very difficult side of the football to get consistent year in and year out. There's a certain amount of, I think, like luck sometimes involved with defense. A couple bounces go your way, a couple turnovers can lead to some stops and whatnot. But all in all, this defense in Miami, rushing especially, I mean, this is kind of the number one, number one qualification, if you will, the Browns are looking for. Can you stop the run? Because we sucked at it this year. We're dead last in the NFL. And he definitely did that in Miami. Before we check out some candidates and some other names to watch for, today's show is brought to you by BetUS. Check out chatsports.com/bet. Use promo code Browns125. You don't have to bet on the Browns-Commanders game. That's not really all that exciting. But there are some awesome prop bets out there. And you know what I always say? If you want to make a bet on the Super Bowl, do it right now. When you have a good idea of who's who, right? And once they enter the postseason, the odds are only going to get worse in terms of like a good payout. So if you've got a good feeling about the Eagles, the Chiefs, I put a $10 future on the Niners. Make all of your bets right now. Chatsports.com/bet. Promo code Browns125. Let's check out this tweet from Brad Stainbrook, though, saying, source, names to watch this offseason for DC jobs around the NFL include Jim Leonard, Leonard Wilson, Jerry Gray, and Carl Scott. So let's check out these four guys right here. Jim Leonard, who was the Wisconsin interim head coach and longtime DC, of course, played with the Browns very briefly, about a decade ago, whatever. Leonard Wilson, he's the defensive backs coach for the Eagles, and that Eagles defense is rocking and rolling in the secondary, right? James Bradbury, Darius Slay, there's a lot of great pieces, so I can see why he's garnered some attention. Jerry Gray is the DB coach over in Green Bay, another coach that's definitely got his defense, especially in the secondary, humming. And then Carl Scott. I mean, these aren't names we all knew going into the season, but you know a name pretty much everyone knows now? Rookie Tariq Woolen. That's the DB out of UTSA for Seattle, who is primed for defensive rookie of the year, and you got to give some credit to his coach, Carl Scott. So keep an eye on those four names per Stainbrook. Now, next up here, what about a different path for the next defensive coordinator for the Browns? What about the Broncos' current defensive coordinator? That is Ejiro Evero. He's in his first season as the Broncos DC, and he was actually offered the interim head coaching job for Denver after they fired Nathaniel Hackett. So in the front office, at least, I mean, there's only so much we can take away from where defensive stats and what the ranks are and whatnot. They clearly like his leadership a lot, or I don't think they'd give him that job opportunity. Now, Browns Wire suggested the Browns look into hiring Evero, and Evero may be on the market because if there's first off, there's going to be a new head coach in Denver, right? Hackett's already fired. So if the new guy comes in and wants to bring his own staff, Evero might be the hottest name on the street. This would be an amazing get for the Browns if they were able to get Evero because he is not retained in Denver for some terrible reason by the new head coach. I mean, whoever it is, Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh, if they don't keep Evero, I think that's a big mistake because he's done a lot of great things. And we'll look at some stats, actually, about what Evero has done with this Broncos defense here. But he would be a fantastic hire, in my opinion, because this Broncos defense, I mean, one, Denver sucks this year, right? They are booty cheeks. But what's not is their defense, actually. And only recently have they started to slip a little bit. Like 20.3 points allowed, that's seventh best. They gave a 50-burger to the Rams because, to me, it looked like that defense just surrendered on Russell Wilson and the offense. They had sucked for so many weeks, and the defense like, we give up. We're out of playoff contention. We have reached our limit. But if you've, watched or followed the Broncos at all this year, you know two things probably. One, major disappointment. Russell Wilson, the offense sucks. But the defense has quietly been very good. And they've also had a lot of injuries. Like, they traded Bradley Chubb. Randy Gregory got hurt. Their star safety, Justin Simmons, got put on IR. They lost some other starters to IR. They're out 5 week one starters at different points for trade or injury or any other reason. So he has kept the ball rolling with some backups and some no-namers, if you will. Now, we ran through a handful of names, so we'll end the show with this question here. Who do you want the next DC to be? you want to be Brian Flores, Evero, one of the DB coaches maybe we talked about? Let me know in the comments section below.